Now we're live.
Hey, hi there. This is Jan Ozer. I am with Chris Knowlton from Wowza, and today we're going to watch a demonstration of the new graphical user interface, the GUI, for Wowza Streaming Engine. Wowza Streaming Engine is it's been a very developer-oriented product, so it has a scripted or scripting interface. You previously couldn't work it with the GUI, and that really kept me from reviewing it because I'm not the programming type. So when Chris told me that they were adding a GUI, I wanted to get a look at it and figured, well, as long as I'm getting a look, I might as well record it and put it on YouTube. So Chris is here with me today. And Chris, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having
Uh,
me on.
yeah, it's a promise. We hung out in I guess it was London, right? We tried to lose you a couple times, but you kept showing up. Yeah, the subways were treacherous in London. Let me leave it at that. Okay, so tell me, is my characterization correct about the Wowza Streaming Engine, formerly the Wowza Media Server? Has that been a developer-oriented product, and does the new GUI do anything to signal a change in that approach?
Yeah, for the longest time it was really designed for folks who are already used to streaming or folks who are willing to jump into the code or XML and learn how to use it. So there was a high barrier to entry for anyone who's used to a GUI interface, folks coming from Windows or Flash Media Server or something like that. But in this version, we did go ahead and put on a full responsive web design UI, so that even IT generalists who just understand how to get in there and check boxes on a web server or a network router at home can feel comfortable jumping into this. And we provide lots of contextual help too, so it's very easy just to read along the right rail and see, oh, that's what that checkbox does. Great, I'll check it. So we tried to make it a lot simpler, eliminate that first major hurdle that a lot of folks who are used to a windowed interface would experience the first time they tried to run Wowza Media Server.
Okay, and why don't you give us like the 2-second tour about where you can access it? I know you can access it from the cloud on-prem. Does anything different from the GUI standpoint depending on where you access it from?
No, in fact, it's a little bit more flexible now. Before, you had to remote into your server wherever it was using, remote desktop or something like this. Now you can just type in any URL, in any browser, the URL to your server. And in fact, you can be managing multiple servers from the same browser interface, whether you're running it on your desktop or on your favorite tablet. All you have to do is type in a URL, and now you have access to each of your servers wherever they are.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about the Wowza. I guess it used to be the Wowza Media Server, now it's the Wowza Streaming Engine. Tell us
Correct.
about, you've been very successful. Give us like the 1-minute tour about where you started and how you developed and what it does now.
Sure. Yeah, so the company started in 2005. Our founders were actually working on a video blogging product, and they found that the existing media servers on the market were not reliable for their needs. So over a 2-week period, one of our co-founders built his own media server, and then they took it off to trade shows to show their video blogging service. And folks keep coming up to the booth and saying, well, the video blogging is great, but what are you using for a media server, and can I buy that? And so they pivoted right there, and they realized that one of the biggest problems for folks was trying to deliver content to multiple screens simultaneously, and so they kept working on building out a product that would make that simpler. If you overlook the UI as being simpler, or the lack of UI, but for folks who are already sort of hands-on with, as I said, configuration files or the API level, it made it much simpler now to ingest content from multiple sources and deliver it to multiple endpoints without having to go and build out separate streaming media stacks, which are typically monolithic encoder, server, player, all from a single vendor. Now you can do it all from a single product. And so we've continued to build out that simplicity as far as the video workflow goes. And what we've done with this latest version is, of course, add the UI, which makes it much simpler for anybody to access on a first time. And before we added that, we were already up at several 100,000 customers in over 150 countries, and there certainly has been a great interest in this new version that makes it so much simpler to get started.
Okay, and was Wowza the first to come up with the concept of transmuxing, where you could take one stream in, say for with RTP live encoder, and then cut a stream without re-encoding for delivery to mass devices, smooth streaming, RT, SP, different devices. Were you the first to do that?
That's a great question, because I was, as you know, I was with Microsoft at the time when Wowza was coming out with some of these features, and the timing was pretty close, I think. Wowza was the first one, though, to put three different formats, three different adaptive streaming formats at once into a single product. So whereas, for instance, IS Media Services started with smooth streaming, then added HTTP live streaming to reach Apple devices, at about the same time, Wowza came out with the ability to reach not only Flash player using HTTP dynamic streaming, but also HTTP live streaming and smooth streaming, in addition to the several traditional formats that they already were supporting, like RTMP streaming and RTSP streaming and MPEG-TS streaming. So I think it was really the first modern media server to address not only multiple protocols and formats, but also multiple adaptive streaming formats, where you just have a single stream coming in with H.264 AC and then being able to transmux or repackage it into multiple formats on the way out.
Okay. And you are one of the only tools out there that you can buy from a server perspective that does live transcoding as well. So you can send a single high-quality stream in, and then you can not only transmux that for different formats, you can create derivative streams from that to fill out the entire adaptive group. That's correct, right?
That is correct, yeah. We were not at all trying to compete with our mini encoding partners when we came up with that, but we had a lot of customers coming to us saying, look, I've got a great encoder, but what I don't have is the bandwidth up to my server, which is sitting in the cloud, typically on AWS. And so their request was, is there some way I can just send one HD stream, 720p stream over bonded cellular devices and get it up to my server and then do the transcoding and the transrating there? And the answer was yes, and so we came up with an add-on for the server that allows you to do that very effectively.
Okay, and that's is that product also accessible via the GUI, or is that still scripting only?
No, it is available, and I can show you. It's in the UI. It's pretty simple to go in and just check some boxes and choose some profiles.
Okay, so give us tell us the costs, and then tell us what you're going to demonstrate to us today.
Sorry, you broke up just a little bit. What was the first part of the question?
What costs you're going to show us today.
I think what you said was, tell us the cost and tell us what I'm going to show you today. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, the cost is, there are two models. There's a subscription model and a perpetual licensing model. The subscription model for Wowza Streaming Engine is $55 a month, and there's volume pricing as you start using additional servers. The add-ons like Wowza Transcoder add-on, the DRM add-on, and the Network DVR add-on that gives you the great sort of TiVo-like instant replay, seek, go to live experiences, all of those are $20 a month. The perpetual licensing model, I believe, is now $1,495. You just pay one cost up front for the server, and then $495 for each of the add-ons. Okay, and then when you talk about perpetual, or when you talk about the monthly rental, are you hosting that for me, or do I have to do that as well? You can do that. We don't currently provide any hosting services, so that would be you either running it on premises or on any cloud instance that you'd like. Okay. Okay, so tell us what you are going to show us today. Yeah, so what I'd like to do is just show you sort of the first-time user experience when you first installed Wowza Streaming Engine. Most folks go up to our website, see the free trial button, download it, install it in just a couple of minutes, and then they launch it, and I just thought I'd walk you through sort of what that first-time experience was and give you the high-level overview of what the main features are. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Very good. All right, so this is the Wowza homepage. Let me just bring up bookmarks here. What normally happens after you install is you get prompted to launch the product, and where that normally takes you is to a page that looks like this. And so it gives you the intro and allows you to sort of get the overview. And what we start doing here is educating folks on what is, what the key concepts are. And the key points to make here is that on the left-hand side, we're showing that, look, no matter what your input device is, whatever your source is, whether it be a mobile encoder, a physical encoder sitting somewhere in our appliance, or a camera with IP capabilities, like some of the new JVC models, or just a media file, you can take all of that and route it into Wowza Streaming Engine, and there you define applications. And the applications are basically just the settings that allow you to configure, here's where my content is coming from, Here's what I want to do to it, how I want to transform it, whether it be create multiple streaming formats output or do the transcoding from different codecs and into H.264 and AC. And then where do I want it to go, and how do I want it to get there? And so
Okay,
this is just sort of...
Can you do the Control plus thing or Command plus thing to make the screen a little bit bigger?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that does help.
Okay. And so, again, just sort of educating about basic concepts with Wowza Streaming Engine. And then if I click Next, I just get prompted to type in my password, which I set during the installation. A highly secure admin-admin combination in my case. And then the next thing that it does is prompt you to provide some publishing credentials so that when you have an encoder that says, you know, I want a password in order to reach here, or let me rephrase, if you want to protect your stream from, so not just anybody can send you an encoded stream, you want to protect the server so only folks who are authorized to send you an encoded stream can do so. Here you can enter publishing credentials for that. And so I'll do that. And then what happens is it launches us here into the home page. And what you see at first is it first tells you information about what kind of license you're using. So if you're using a trial, great, you know that you only have 44 days left to think about it before it expires and you have to do something else, either request another trial license or get a developer license or start purchasing at $55 a month. If I had a bunch of connections going here, it would actually show me those in this section here. It would show me how many connections I have to the server. Currently I don't because I'm not actually streaming. I just launched the server. Similarly here, usage, it gives you the high-level indicator of how your server's doing. You know, do you have enough CPU? Do you have enough memory? Do you have enough disk? And once it hits 80%, it goes to a bright red to show you that, hey, you're starting to get a little thin on resources. You might want to think about what you should do at this point.
Okay, let me. You probably said this, but I've missed it. So when I click the Try Now button on your site, is that going to install it on my local machine?
Oh, the free trial button?
Correct.
Yeah. What it does is it takes you to well, here I can just show you if you'd like. Maybe that'd be the best way.
Okay.
Show you what that experience is like. So if you go to almost any page on the Wowza.com site, you see this free trial button up at the top. And I'll go ahead and click on that. And it just takes you to a forum where it asks you some basic questions so we know who you are and get a little more information about what you're doing. And then you just request a free trial. You don't need a credit card or anything. And then immediately what happens is in your inbox, you'll get a piece of mail that says, here's your Wowza license and here's a link to download it. And the downloads link will really just take you over to our downloads page here where you can then pick from the appropriate build here and click download and install it. As soon as it downloads, you double click and launch it and go. And it's fairly straightforward. And
okay,
then at that point, sorry?
Will it find all the TCP/IP settings and URL addresses and all that automatically, or am I going to have to configure that in?
No, to get started, you don't have to do anything. And in fact, I'll show you. So I just installed this other version yesterday, but used an existing license key. So let me go back over here. And one of the first things that it does is it gives you this test players button right away. Do you see that?
Yep.
So if I click on test players, it will actually go and launch a set of tabs which allow us to see, is this actually working or not? And so each of these represents a different streaming format and a player in each of these tabs. And if I just click start, then what happens is it starts taking a file that's on board, which happens to be Big Buck Bunny, everyone's favorite streaming demo, and it starts playing it back and lets you see, look, this thing already works with RTMP. What if I go to HTTP Dynamic Streaming, HDS, and click start on that? Does it play there as well? And the answer is yes. So it's already pre-configured to allow all of these to play, whether it be RTMP or HDS or Smooth or MPEG Dash. If I were on an iOS device or a MacBook, I could play the Apple HLS content. If I wanted to test if it works on a mobile device, I can go in here on the mobile tab, and what it does is gives me URLs so that I can just send to myself down at this box at the bottom. And then on the mobile device, open up that mail and click on the link and make sure that, on my iOS device or on my Android device, this content's playing back. So it gives you a really easy way right up front to say, is this working? Do I have enough ports open in order for my content to get to the endpoints I want to reach?
Now, we talked about the concept of transmuxing. Did you pre-encode all those Big Buck Bunny instances, or are you dynamically transmuxing the single file from disk while I'm playing it?
It's always being transmuxed. There's a single MP4 file on the server that got installed with the server. Now it's now sitting on my laptop in front of me,
Right.
and everything else is just being repackaged on the fly. So, whilst the streaming engine goes, grabs the file, breaks it into small pieces, typically 2 seconds long in the case of HLS, 10 seconds long, and then repackages those pieces so that it works correctly on each of the appropriate devices.
Okay. Is it also trans-rating? I mean, is it transcoding as well, or is this just doing?
No, this is single bit rate in this case.
Okay. And how powerful a computer do you need for single bit rate?
Oh, it doesn't have to be very powerful. The real question becomes, are you running other applications, and how many streams do you want to serve? But lots of folks using even older machines can certainly run the trial. Old machines running Windows XP or old MacBooks or Linux, and they can run the trial and then make sure that at least a few streams will stream so that they understand how it's working, and go from there. Okay. And then once you decide, yes, this is what I need, I just need to put it on a production machine, then you can size it up appropriately for the kind of scale and processing that you want to do. Got
it. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all right. That was where I was going to go next anyway. So it was like a softball. Okay. So then the next thing probably is to head over to the server tab, and this gives you just a bunch of sort of useful information like server setup. Tells you things like which license key you have. So if you happen to be running several servers with a perpetual license or trial licenses, lets you know which one this happens to be. Which can be useful sometimes. This is also if you edited and say you bought a perpetual license and then you decided later, I'd really like to add DRM, and here you would just edit the content and you would just add another license key for the DRM on the line below. So it allows you to really easily go ahead and change that as you make additions and expand your video workflow. We also have, similar to that sort of mini graph on the first page, we have a bunch of graphs here on the server page for monitoring. It allows you to see the overview, allows you to see how many connections you have, allows you to see what your network's doing both in and out, and you can see based on that demo, that sample, Big Buck Bunny that I played a few minutes ago, that it shows that I had some traffic flowing through there. Same here under CPU, showed the CPU jumped up a little bit as it started pulling that content and transmuxing it on the fly. So it just gives you a bunch of indicators that let you know the health of your server and let you dig in over a wide variety of time, anywhere from the last hour by default to the last 365 days, and you can also customize by typing in dates and times at the top and choose different types of graphs just by clicking on here. And then if you see an interesting spike or something somewhere, an even easier way to do it is just to do a drag and drop. So I can just drag and drop on there and dig in it, at a deeper level. And of course, this would be much more interesting if I had hundreds of clients on here as opposed to just the one. But it gives you the idea of how powerful this UI for the monitoring is, because it lets you really dig in deeply to just the information that you need to see.
Okay.
We also have I'll just sort of talk about some of these things down the left rail here. We have the capability of doing virtual hosts. This, in fact, is running as a virtual host. And if you think about web hosting, essentially what they're doing is taking one piece of software and running it as multiple slices, right? It's essentially they're providing one big box, one big server for a bunch of websites, and they slice up that one big web server into what look like, say, 10 small servers. And each person who owns a website can go into to the control panel and control all the pieces of their slice. And so you can do the same thing with Wowza Streaming Engine. So it lets you, as an administrator, share your server, your streaming server, across multiple websites that aren't able to interact with each other, or perhaps more appropriately, within the enterprise, let's say a large corporation, you might say, legal gets their own media server, HR gets their own media server, marketing gets their own. We certainly don't want the content to ever mix, or somebody in the marketing department to go into the legal videos. And so these all get treated as separate servers. So it's a great way to take a single server on a big piece of beefy hardware and share it across multiple groups without them being able to interact with each other or mess with each other's content.
Okay.
The transcoder add-on section here just gives you, this is where there are defined number of pieces of information. This isn't actually where you enable it, but we come with some predefined templates that allow you to say, I only want to do audio only. I just want to do transcoding. I'm bringing this stuff in as MPEG TS content, and I want to transcode to H.264, let's say, or the transrating, where I'm bringing in that single HD content, a 720p stream, let's say, with H.264AC already as the codecs, and I just want to transrate it into multiple bit rates at lower bit rates so that I can do more effective adaptive bitrate streaming. And so this just gives you the templates, and you can go in and add your own templates. You can copy the templates and adjust them as you want. So it's a great way to get started without having to go and build out your profiles for how you want to do the transcoding.
Where do you actually build out the profile? So if you click transrate default, is that going to open up a configuration screen, or is that going to?
Yeah, let me show you what that does. So that brings you into our default for that particular profile, and by default we have enabled source stream, a 360 stream, and a 160p stream, just as a way to get started fast. You can go in and check different boxes in here. Not on this particular one unless I go into these, the edits. But then you can check the boxes and say, look, I want to do all of these. You can have H.263 output as well for legacy devices, like feature phones and emerging markets. But it's fairly easy to do that. And of course, the other thing you can do is go back and choose, oops, sorry, I went too far back. I chose the back button instead. You can go into here and also just add a template or copy a template and then customize it any way you'd like to.
Okay.
One of the other things I'll mention on here, it's potentially a higher level feature, but I'll list it just because, or mention it because it's interesting for some folks, is we also have a decode capability. And what that means is that if you have, for some reason, somebody has handed you play-ready encrypted content, perhaps you're trying to stick to movie studio standards which say content cannot be moved around unless it's protected somehow. Let's say, I'll give you even better a user example. We have a lot of customers who run planes, trains, and cruise ships. And they get content that comes in as play-ready encrypted HD content, and then they want to deliver it to all the users on board on the devices that they've brought on with them. So they bring play-ready encrypted content onto their, let's say, their cruise ship, and they put it on their Wowza Streaming Engine. And then Wowza Streaming Engine pulls the content. They've entered their play-ready license, so it decodes the content. So now it's in the clear for momentarily. And then we transmux it into all those other formats, HLS, smooth streaming, etc., and then re-encrypt it with play-ready on the way out. So the only place it's ever in the clear is on Wowza Streaming Engine just while it's being transformed into those different formats. So some folks find that handy so that they know that they can move their content around, whether it be corporate earnings video or it be that studio content, and they can move it to a different Wowza Streaming Engine and then decode it and then reformat it and then deliver it in a protected way.
Got it.
All right, the next thing down on the left rail is MediaCast. There's really not much to see there, but it's talking about the fact that you can specify that I have a bunch of on-demand assets somewhere, whether it be on a web server or a file server or in a S3 bucket on AWS, and I can pull that content from that remote storage directly and bring it to this server without having to go and do anything fancy with storage configurations or anything. So it just makes it very easy if you have an existing library to point your Wowza Streaming Engine at that existing library, pull the content up, transform it into multiple formats, and stream it out.
Okay.
We also have the concept of multiple users. It's currently set up as an admin. That's me at the moment. But you can also set up users who just have read-only access, so they can go in, make sure that their content's there, make sure the configurations are right, but they can't actually affect anything. Under publishers, this is where you see who can actually publish content from an encoder to your server. That's what I did earlier when we went through that first-time user experience. I put in an admin password. And that's really the key stuff. The other thing down here is the about. It just tells you what OS you're running, what manager build you're running, which Wowza Streaming Engine build you're running. You know, it kind of gives you the all-up overview of all the various system information that you might need if you were troubleshooting something.
Okay.
Then we go to applications. And as I said, this is sort of the heart of it. This is where we define where you're grabbing the content and what you're doing with it. And so by default, we have a live application and an on-demand application already defined. And the VOD application is in fact the Big Buck Bunny video that we saw from those test players on the first page. So that's one of the reasons we set it up ahead of time, just so as soon as you launch this thing out of the box, you can actually go and try the on-demand playback. And similarly, there's a live application already defined. If you wanted, of course, you can just define your own. You can go in here and choose from 6 buttons that we provide in the middle of the page that allow you to say, I want to define my server to be a single server or an origin server pushing to somewhere else, to downstream servers. I can define this server as an edge server. So if I had, for instance, an enterprise and I had one server at headquarters and another server at my Fargo office and another one at my Mountain View office, I could say this server is an edge server. It's going to be pulling from that origin server back at headquarters and then redistributing here locally. And so it just changes some of the configuration settings to make it easier for you so you don't have to go in and muck around too much. And then there's live HTTP origin. It's not available with the trial license, but what this allows you to do is take a single server anywhere and push your content into a content delivery network like Akamai or Limelight or Level 3. And so very easily it helps walk you through those steps so that you can very quickly just take content and push it out globally through a CDN.
Okay.
Let me show you the live one a little bit. Similar to the server level, it has monitoring, so you can see, you know, how many people are watching and on what formats are they watching, and of course the same kind of graphs down below. It can show you who's pushing content to you, and this is actually new, Jan. You're seeing something that hasn't been seen publicly before. Here, and it might be interesting to you given all your encoding work too. Under here, you see the Setup Your Encoder section at the top, and where before we used to just list the information over here on the right, which gives you host and port and everything that you need in order to publish. Now we say, well, look, if you happen to be running one of these encoders, these are all Works with Wowza partners, they've done some work on their side to make it easier now to incorporate streaming right directly to a Wowza server from their user interface, and we're making it easier on our user interface to say, look, if I'm using a NewTek encoder, a TriCaster, here's the information I need, and I can now just click on this button and download the configuration and put it right on that TriCaster, and it's already set now to stream. I don't have to go type anything into the user interface on the TriCaster.
That's nice. I guess that's what YouTube does, I think. YouTube Live, something like that.
Oh, it could be. I don't know.
Okay, so I got it. So you're going to demo Wowza GoCoder.
Yeah, GoCoder is our mobile encoding application that runs on iOS and Android devices. And so for our purposes here, it's already got configuration set up. If I were running this user interface from my iPad, I could actually just say, click on this button and say, auto configure, because I'd already have GoCoder on my iPad as well. So I could be using a GoCoder at a far event. I could be managing my server and also doing the encoding on that device. As it is, I'm running this on a Lenovo laptop, so what I'm going to do instead is send myself the configuration for this server and then open it up on my GoCoder on my iOS device. And so that'll launch an email, and I will say high importance to get it here faster, and I'll go ahead and send that. And then what I'll do is I will go ahead and open up my iPhone, which is right in front of me, and I will share my screen so you can see it. So you can see exactly how this works.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the idea, though. I don't know if this is going to work very well. Let's see. So what I'm trying to do here, once I get rid of this message. So what I just sent, again, this is why the screen sharing thing usually works better. Can you see, is it backwards for you?
No, we see it.
Okay, it's backwards for me. Okay, so there's a piece of email that just came in from the server. And if I go into that, there's a URL down in here. And I just tap on that URL. And what happens is it launches Wowza Go Coder and asks me if I want to overwrite my settings, and I do. And let me just show you what that looks like. How about there? That must be pretty close.
A little bit up, a little bit further away. Okay, that's good.
And so what you're seeing is just the first time user experience on Go Coder, which gives you all the contextual help saying, here's what all the controls do. And I'll go ahead and tap that. And then you'll see the back of my hand here. And what I'll do is go into the settings real quick. There's a little gear icon up there. And you'll see that if we go into like host, it's already set the IP address.
And that's from the downloadable file.
It's from that configuration that got sent in the email. So all the configuration's done. You don't have to worry about typing in an IP address on a small screen, which I've always find to be problematic and a great source of errors. The only thing it hasn't done is fill in the password here. I'll go ahead and do that real quick, because we don't want to send passwords in the clear or through email. So now I've got that, and the other thing I'll do here, there are settings I can touch up in the corner, and it asks if I want to do stream video and audio or just video only. I'll do video only so we don't get any extra video or audio coming through. Oops, let me hit back. I also changed the video size to 720p, which works great on an iPhone 5. I can also apply some filters here down at the bottom, but I'm not going to do that because we don't really need to do it. But it has black and white and fuzzy and some other things. And then I'll go ahead and change the bit rate to 2500 kilobits per second, and I'll hit the play button, or the start button. Now what happens is there's a little timer in the bottom going now saying, look, this is actually connected to your server and it's going. And rather than look at me or my wall, I'll let you look at some virtual fish. Okay, so you should be looking at the incoming publishers page again. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to click on incoming streams, and what we'll see here in the middle of the page is this incoming stream, which is that stream from my Go Coder on my iPhone. And what I can do now to make sure that it's running, in fact, I can also, at this point, I can click on this red button and start recording the stream. And you can set that up so it automatically does that. Every time a stream comes in, you start recording it automatically so that no matter where the stream's coming from, you have a record of it. And in fact, a lot of news organizations now are taking Go Coder and giving it to all there's an application to all their reporters in the field, because they say, look, reporters out there, they sometimes run across interesting stories where they don't have a camera crew with them. They could pull this out, send a 720p stream that's good enough to put on the air, and then if we record it locally, then we have it for later post-production work as well. And so a lot of folks will do that. But again, I can go and test the players as we did with that on-demand application showing Big Buck Bunny at the beginning. And what we should see now is the virtual fish tank. So we know that that's actually working. And again, we can go through into these other formats as well and click play and just make sure that those all work as well. And that one doesn't. That's the problem with live demos. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Probably means I need to update Silverlight. And then, of course, excuse me, you can go to the mobile tab and send yourself those URLs and test it on your mobile devices as well.
Okay. And I know that you have documentation on the website that covers this, but how would I integrate this into a player like the JW player, for example?
Oh, that's a great question. In fact, we have a couple of demos up there where we do it very quickly. It's pretty easy to do that. In fact, the way I usually do it when I'm demoing is I go to this mobile page and I grab this URL, this iOS URL, and then I pop over to jwplayer.com, and I have an account there already, so I can just sign in. And then go to the publishing link up at the top. And for the media file, now you just enter that HLS URL that ends in M3U8, and you could type in any image, and you could type in a title of some sort and hit publish video. And since I didn't give it an image, it'll come up with the default image. And here now it gives you the ability to fix your dimensions, choose which skin you want. Let me zoom in a little so you can see that better too. choose which skin you want, whether you want to play back as HTML5 or Flash as the default, use Google Analytics, things like that. I'll switch right ahead. Well, let me show you that it works first. Hit the play button. Now we're streaming on the jwplayer.com site with that player, their player, that runs across devices and screens. And then I can go to the get embed code, and I can just pull this code out and plop that onto my HTTP page somewhere, my web page, and that makes the player work on any web page that you have.
Okay, and that's going to be different from player to player.
Yeah, so this is just a great example of using JW Player. It could be Flow Player. You could build your own with Flash Player and Silverlight and do some things like that as well, or use their default players. And there are lots of player versions that people have built on top of those, OSMF, and there's some Silverlight open source projects and things. So there are lots of ways to build players, but something like JW Player or Flow Player that works across devices and screens are great options for hitting lots of screens without doing a lot of work on the client side.
Okay.
And at a high level, that's it. There are a lot of other, we can go much, much deeper, but at a high level, that's what most folks need to get started and deliver content to almost any screen on the planet.
Okay, any limitations, anything I have to do via scripting, whether it be DRM or captions?
With captions, you have to do a little work manually. We haven't yet included any support for that through the user interface. There are articles that say, here's exactly how you do it with Wowza Streaming Engine on our website so that you know what you need to do. With DRM, you don't have to do anything if you're using our DRM add-on. In that case, you're probably working with one of these DRM service providers like ByDRM, Verimatrix, or EasyDRM, in which case you would set up an account with them. They would be giving you license keys to encrypt the content. They would then, in here you would go in and just sign in with your credentials and say, here's my ByDRM user key. That's what you would actually need to do. Choose what kind of protection you want to provide, HLS, smooth, MPEG dash. And you can add some information about stream name mapping, which just makes the URLs simpler when you're delivering them. And then you click Save. And it's really that simple. At that point, Wowza Streaming Engine goes to the ByDRM license server. It pulls down a key every time you pull in a new piece of content and encrypts the content. And then your end users get that stream at their end, and the first thing that happens is the ByDRM player pops up and says, please enter your license key. You enter that license, it will actually authorize that person based on how they're getting the content. If you're like a Netflix, a movie service or something like that, your credentials get typed in and that authorizes you, and then it goes up to the server, and the server comes back with the right key and enables the player to play back the content. But you, as an administrator of the server, only need to check some boxes and type in some information and click Save.
Okay, I got it. Okay, I mean that looks pretty functional and pretty simple. I'm sure the devil's in the details, but it seems pretty.
Yeah, exactly. It just depends on what you're trying to do. But at a high level, it allows you to get started really quickly. And there are lots of great short videos on our site, on YouTube, and lots of tutorials. And as you probably noticed as we were going through some of these things, there's lots of great contextual help over on the right-hand side. So if you're just getting started and you don't know what some of the terms mean, scroll down and you'll find out what all these things mean very quickly. And we also provide from each of those short topics links directly to the in-depth help. So if you need to know more details about it, we provide that as well. So for all of these topics, it's very easy to get started, learn what you need to know at a high level, and then dive in deeper to details as you need them.
Okay, so let's. I am going to put me back on screen, for better or for worse. Okay, so listen, anything else, or is that we're pretty much done?
I think that's it. That covers all the high-level stuff.
Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time with us today. This was useful for me to kind of understand, as I said at the start, that was something I could use before, but now it looks like something that potentially I would be able to use. Do you see this as expanding for you, or making it easier for existing users, or what's your hope?
For our existing users, there will be some that are going to find it just much easier to use Wowza Streaming Engine than they have in the past. And especially if they're working with other people, as video grows in different organizations, it's often likely that it no longer does one admin want to be the sole person who knows how to run the server. And so now they can actually share that responsibility with more people, and given that we have different user levels, admin and read-only and things, it makes it much easier as well. So it's much easier now within an organization to share the responsibility for administering a Wowza Streaming Engine server. But it also really opens up the market for a lot of IT generalists that have tried Wowza in the past, found it a little bit too complex, too much of a learning curve for them. Now they can get started much more easily, and those are the folks who seem to be embracing the new version most readily.
Okay. Well, listen, again, thanks for taking the time, and I'm going to close up now.
Okay,
And
great.
we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks very much, Jen.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.